Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final day of the Sonic Ecology conference. I have great pleasure of introducing Karen Yu here today, and she's going to be presenting actually a commission project that was announced through our call for projects as part of this conference. The title of her presentation and artwork is called The Vigil of Debris, a waste discarding ritual. So I'll just hand over to Karen now. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, William. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today at the Sonic Ecology Conference. So let me share the PowerPoint, and I'll be with you soon. My name is Karen. I am a percussionist, and I have some experience in sound art and experimental music. This work is actually one of the first multimedia project that I've ever done, and I will be talking about it today, the composition and the execution and performance process. Also, my findings after completion of the project through examining two very different interpretations of the Vigil of Debris. I will demonstrate how perception and intentionality changes our behavior towards these items. First, I'd like to talk about how I came to realize this project. What brought my attention to focus on debris, waste, garbage, trash, is I have witnessed how our habits have been deeply influenced by COVID. We're relying a lot more on disposable items these days, and most of these items have become necessity to us. Masks, takeouts, PPE, our personal protective equipment, etc. I mean, I see tricolor bins all the time, and most of us have to use them. It is the most accessible recycling option for us, but I was always very skeptical about how much of our items that we dish in the bins are being recycled or even going to be recycled. Where are they really going? How often are we being reminded about the objects we have used and discarded or recycled? So of course, I went online and did some research. Everybody loves data, right? So what do we know about recycling in Hong Kong or in your own town? What do we know about recycle? How do we recycle in Hong Kong? How do you recycle? By dumping the items into the tricolor bins, or do you call that recycling? The reality is only 30% of our waste we generate in Hong Kong are being recycled. Our plastic recycling rate is only at 14%, and our glass recycling rate is as low as 7%. So let's talk about New York City, 21%, even lower. And then we have San Francisco, 80%. Oh, it's not so bad. And then Singapore is 61%. But these data are probably not reflecting the actual situation here. It's very easy to compare on the PowerPoint, but I think it's about the amount of waste that's being generated and then being recycled. The problem is we are generating these items, and we have a habit of generating them. Not only me, but I think most of you who are in Hong Kong are very skeptical about the recycling programs, where they end up, or are they even being recycled at all? Do you know if the bottles you dumped in the blue bin today are being recycled or not? We will never know. They could be contaminated by other plastic items or being sent to the landfill or end up in the ocean. The act of recycling provides an excellent excuse for us to feel less guilty when we generate waste. So as a percussionist, I thought we have a very different idea about recycling. We're very lucky to be able to recycle through playing music. I've been asked to look for objects to be used as instruments in various pieces, and I have collected such as bottles, plastic glasses bottles, flower pots, tin cans, toys, sand, tree branches, and even chicken bones. Are they still considered found objects if I had to buy them to play these pieces? Sometimes I wonder if I didn't turn these used items into instruments, would they end up in the trash can? When an item has finished its purpose, most of the people would throw them out or bring them to a recycling bin. This is a throwaway culture that we have been promoted by consumerism, a culture that has been related to materialism. The materialistic values are heavily rooted in our generation, not to mention the generation after us. Just like the found objects, if we give these ways a new purpose, would that change our behavior towards them? And therefore, I like to address these problems through the Vigil of Debris. This piece is an event to mourn disposed and forgotten debris that will continue to exist as our reminder of us. A ritual to sensitize ourselves to the daily apathetic act of discarding waste, and a warning to be conscious of our unrealistic perception of recycling non-biodegradable waste. The performer is instructed to collect pieces of waste they produce and transform these items from personal possessions to totems. By evaluating these re-evaluating these objects as instruments, the player is asked to interpret, explore, and even revere objects they would normally discard. The ritual, as a reflection, demonstrates the significance of these used items through the player's interpretation of a series of proposed actions. Through realizing the performance on the collected debris and the documentation of performers' daily consumption of the plastic and disposable items, the Vigil of Debris urges performers and observers like you to rethink the necessity and the use of those items, how to be more thoughtful about not using them, reusing them, and look for alternatives. There are 4 core elements of the piece, and I will be going through them today very quickly. The number 1 element is the collection of debris and the waste. The 2 performers are asked to collect all kinds of waste generated within 1 week. So any kind of waste. So plastic, the takeouts, food, drinks, tissue paper, masks, all that stuff. And second element is to make logs. They have to take photos of them. They have to write a little diary of them every day. And for the masks and other PPE equipment, they usually would throw them away because of hygienic problems. And number 3 is the actual ritual and the video, which I will be showing in a bit. The ritual is a little hike up to a trail with all the items they have collected, and they have to perform a ritual, a composition that I wrote for the debris. And lastly is the website that consolidates every element in this project, and I will be showing you in a bit as well. So these are some of the items that were collected by them over a week. In mid-November, the lockdown wasn't here yet, so they were still pretty much going out every day. You see some masks and you see some drinks, alcohol, cigarette, water bottles, quite a bit of takeouts. Actually, it was pretty funny to me that one of the performers said to me that he didn't think that one takeout would have brought them like 10 pieces of debris, that he had to take 10 photos and make 10 logs for one meal that he had from a fast food chain. Yeah, so at the end of the day, they would clean all of these items and place them into the bag and wait for the day of the hike where they would just grab the bag, take everything with him and hike up the trail. This is what the log looks like. So on the right-hand side, you see the date and time when he used the item, duration of use, how long has he been using the item. I have pretty much given them all the freedom they can have. So they can think of the duration of use and cost, if any, in different ways. So let's say if you have a plastic bag, you at the cost section, you could just say how much was the plastic bag. Let's say it's 50 cents from a supermarket, or you can actually mention the cost of the items inside the bag, the items that were contained inside the bag, or the cost of a takeout, etc. And the location, very simple, and then description and purpose, a mask or tissue paper, etc. So the very interesting part, the last part that could be quite difficult, is the Q&A. I have suggested a number of questions that they have to answer for every piece of item. So those are the sample questions on the left that they could think about, they could match. So some of the questions are pretty specific for plastic items or like COVID-related items, but I really just let them think about which question would work the best. And at the end, I remember on the 4th and 5th day, they began generating their own questions, which is also very interesting to me. Yeah, so I will be showing you the logs in just a few seconds. So this is the website, and I'll just like to get through the little hashtags on the left, because those hashtags were, hashtags are really promoted by Tumblr, so I decided to use them too. For VOD is the name of the piece, and VODLL, VODSC on the top 2 lines are the 2 performers. So if you click on them, you'll find items generated by these 2 performers categorized into that page. And then there are these 6 categories that I decided to make for the items that they have generated after reading them for a couple times. It's the plastic, paper, takeouts, COVID, beverage, and cigarette. One sec, I'm just going to show you the website. There it is. This is a Tumblr website, quite accessible, I think. If you scroll down, this is the main page, the home page. There is a description of the project, and you'll start seeing these items that they have generated. Soda cans, and when you put your cursor over, you'll find the logs. Does recycling this item cause hygienic problems? It does when you don't clean it before you recycle it. Plastic bag, like I mentioned, is it biodegradable? No. Beer cans, would you prefer to reuse it? No. Cooking packaging, cooking seasoning packaging. This person just actually says that he cooks way more during COVID-19. Electric toothbrush, packaging. How many people around you were using the same kind of item? I know quite a lot of people who use this electric toothbrush. So there are these little things that they are thinking about while making this log. Did you encounter any obstacles in recycling this kind of item? I am often uncertain about which kind of packaging material is recyclable. So going back to the presentation. Yeah, so I will share this website in a bit for you to take a look. Then this is the composition. So after the collection of the debris, they have to hike with me and the videographer. And there are 3 pages of this composition that I like to read out a little bit. Movement 0, at home, the bottom of the hill, as fast as possible. Consolidate the items into a big bag. The walk, grave, or just slow. Carry the bag like a Santa Claus or drag the bag as if it's a heavy suitcase until you've arrived at your destination. And this is my favorite part of the composition, is a lullaby. Place the items nicely around you and make sure you can reach them with your hands. Complete the following 9 tasks in any order and repeat as many times as you wish. Sit outside of the station for 30 seconds, watch the leaves fall and birds fly. Hit them as if they are some beautiful little bells. Freeze for 10 seconds. Make consistent sounds as quietly as possible. Close your eyes for 10 seconds. Change your position by rotating your body. Act like you're making sounds, but don't make a sound. Count 1 to 8 without speaking. Make many crispy sounds for a while. Slow down when you feel tired. Eventually, stop making sounds. Stop moving. So my approach to composition, my first composition, is that I wanted the performer to know what they're doing. Just execute the actions and really think how you're going to execute them. I didn't want them to think musically what's going to happen, but I want them to be in the mood, in the situation, in the scenario, to really, and that's the fragile that I'm trying to give them, to be able to be in that area and do whatever they have to do. And adjournment, ad lib, this is the last part. Stack them up, don't let them fall. Place the stacked debris carefully into the bag again. Carry the bag carefully down the hill and take it home. So for the hike, we selected Longfu Shan, because it was a location actually suggested by Lee and Sharon. I took the hike before I brought the 2 performers there. And I ended up being at the Pinewood Battery War shelters. It's very interesting. The acoustic is very special. You don't hike somewhere and get an acoustic like that because of the really torn down concrete, and people walk by and somehow the speaking sound bounces off the concrete. It's just very unique to me. I did go to the actual battery ground, but I thought there was no relevance to the project. I did not want to use the space without acknowledging its history. And I could feel this intensity and heaviness in the air when I entered the shelters, which is also an impression I'd like to have for the performer when they execute the ritual, as they mourn for the items. In addition, I think the concrete walls really help to project some of the sound of the debris, where plastic might not be able to project in the open space. As far as I know, the shelters were abandoned before the last fight of World War II. I think it was abandoned in 1941. And yeah, the Japanese army identified the shelters pretty much as soon as they got here. At the shooting, I allowed the performers to choose where exactly they want to shoot the ritual. And interestingly, they both of them chose completely different areas or completely different paths for the shooting. It's actually very interesting to me. Yeah, so I am about to show the video. Please use your headphone for the best sound experience, because there are a lot of quiet and subtle sounds in the video. Make yourself comfortable, sit on a couch. The first video is by Lawrence. It's around 30 minutes long. The second one is 17 minutes long. welcome back. Thank you for watching the two videos. I hope you had some interesting insight observations, as the two have already talked to me a lot about the two interpretations. I'm just going to wrap up a little bit before we head to the Q&A. So let me just share the slides. To me, there are two very, very different interpretations that was unexpected before I took them to the hike. I did not expect any of this. I did not expect to have this conclusion, actually. The two different approaches to this composition suggested that our perspective changes our personal connection with the object. While the performers are being reminded of the objects they have used in the past, they're realizing the relationship with them. The memories of the specific occasion when these items were being used are reflected through the behavior towards the objects. Whether the objects have become waste or vice versa, the transitions and reflections are being witnessed throughout the ritual. Through the relatable images, the honest and sincere logs provokes us by bringing attention to the insignificant and forgotten connections we had with various objects. Musically speaking, the two different interpretations, one by a sound artist, improviser, composer, and one by a percussionist, also highlights the personalities of the performers and demonstrates importance of having personal contributions into a ritual-like performance. While one interpretation was more unplanned, abrupt, responsive, the other one was more gentle, planned, and detail-attentive. These are reflections of experience that contribute to the day-long transition of perspectives on the items. I was asked, what am I really proposing here to help the earth? Or why wouldn't I just spend time to see where our recycled items are going after we put them into the tricolor bins? It is true that our number one action plan right now is to stop generating these waste, disposable and non-biodegradable items. But through the Vigil of Debris, my second answer is that perhaps we could start by changing the way we see objects and material, realize and reevaluate the value of these items to us, and learn to give to be recycled, discarded items a new purpose instead of throwing them away mindlessly. At last, I'd like to thank you for all of you joining me today for this really long presentation. I do hope this will change the way you look at things around you, the way you treat them. I'd also like to help all the staff around me who are helping me to make this possible behind the Zoom. I'd like to also take a moment to thank Kenneth and Amy, who are on Image and Sound. I had no experience producing videos or films, not to mention that this was shot outdoors, so there were extra challenges. They really took the time to guide me through and to complete such beautiful project in very, very short amount of time. I'd also like to thank Lawrence and Samuel. Lawrence has been extremely supportive and gave me extensive amount of advice since day one, when I had the idea of this project. Samuel, brilliant percussionist who has never done anything like this. He did exceptionally well to interpret from what I have told him. And 2 little pieces of paper I gave him on the day. I really appreciate the 2 very faithful and true-hearted performance they gave at the Hills. All of them had the most gracious amount of patience for me, working with me. A newbie on my first composition and multimedia project, much appreciated. And last but not least, Sonic Ecology, Hong Kong New Music Ensemble, for this commission project. It has given me a lot of courage to try something beyond my expertise, and I think it has opened the door for me to try to a completely new territory here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Karen. Quite a thought-provoking presentation. I mean, definitely from my perspective, when we saw your proposal, I think it was similar to your reaction. You didn't expect to see what you saw, and I think from our perspective too, it's like what we see on like in a project proposal like this, and what we see as a realization and realize within a very short space of time. as well. It's quite profound.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now also, so we actually have 15 minutes to wrap up. Yeah. We need to change over to the.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll just change over so you can see us. There we are. Okay. Hello. My name's William, by the way. If you're just joining us, you were just hearing Karen Yu's Vigil of Debris, a new work, her first multimedia work in this sense, which was chosen through a call for projects as part of the Sonic Ecology conference. I'm joined here by Angus Lee, the new music ensemble program manager as well, and we're here sort of just to wrap up and also to facilitate a Q&A and sort of with anyone joining us online via Zoom as well. But firstly, maybe I could get it started. Just in terms of I remember when we first talked about this project, I brought up the zero waste advocate Laura Singer's concept of like trash in a bottle. Over the course of a year, she'd collected the trash to fill a very tiny bottle. And what I see now is that when asked to collect our own trash from a week of consumption, actually I'm just sort of interested, like with your performers, whether when you told them, could you do this over the course of the week, did they reflect on how their habits changed, or were they more conscious through their daily living, or was this just they were sort of documenting their everyday existence?
This is a great question. I talked to them so early November after our talk about inviting them to this project, and Lawrence was like, "Oh, I'm gonna have so much bubble tea bottles," and then Samuel was kind of like, "Oh yeah, I'll be like having a lot of takeouts." They were kind of anticipating what's gonna happen to the logs, but turns out after the collection, they were like, actually, I don't think I have that much trash. That I don't think I have generated that much trash. Not to mention that one fast food chain, Meals, that has generated 10 diaries. But then I felt like they were pretty true-hearted to the project. They didn't really try to I don't want to show them that I've eaten like 10 soup noodle bowls in a week. Like, I don't think they were hiding anything from me. And yeah.
Yeah, because actually I think a lot of us, hyper consumers in Hong Kong, it's actually, I probably go through a lot more beer cans than these guys do, as for one. But and as you said, you could have taken this project on a very different path of where does my recycling go? But I think actually something like this is quite reflective, also from the performer's perspective. So, and I was quite intrigued to see how they interpreted the relationship with their trash in very different ways, as you already explained. Yeah.
You're right. I also think that I also remember that Samuel told me that he actually had planned to save some of the waste, so he could bring it with him to the hike, so he could produce more interesting sounds. I think that's like a mindset of a percussionist, and I could really see it through his performance. And same as Lawrence, where he was more like spontaneous. Oh, I want to do this. I want to make this sound. I'm going to respond to the airplane. This is all very much reflected. We have a question.
From Chen Jiangyi in Singapore. Great
Hello.
project, Karen. Are there any longer-term plans for this project, if any?
I am very open to making this project long-term. If anyone is interested, I'd happy to put them on the logs and do a video for them. I don't have a concrete plan, but I would love to.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, what do you think, Angus? I mean, this Sonic Ecology as a concept, as a conference, it's really kickstart its aim is to kickstart certain projects, certain initiatives that can carry through. I mean, not only in this pandemic time, but also really interesting artistic initiatives that have legs. So yeah, I think as a you know, as you've created the Tumblr site, it could also be a great online project that other people could contribute to. Or I don't know, we
Exactly.
could definitely think about things in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but first of all, of course, congratulations, Karen, on your first major composition. It was certainly a very intriguing process to witness how the two performers coming from two slightly different background interpreting the piece so differently. And one of the things when I was looking at your presentation, you were speaking about how you would like to re-examine the relationship between objects and performers. And since the major player in the spotlight in this project is trash, I think one of the observations that I made while looking at the two performances is how the performers objectify the trash, and in the way that they're engaging with the objects, they're really treating them like something out there. They're doing things to the objects, but they're not bringing the objects to themselves, and they're not actively trying to re-engage them with the body, with more intimate methods. And I was wondering if this is something that you anticipated, or maybe upon reflection you might change something in your composition, in the text base, in the content of the text, to perhaps open this dimension to other performers as well, because I think that is something that's worthy of contemplation for future development, since the question of longevity of the project came up.
This is a very great observation that you had, because I did not anticipate to see the personal connection between the performers and the objects. That was not something that I had anticipated. I have been very interested in personal connections in chamber music setting, in more like a classical performance research kind of thing. But then with objects, it kind of opened a different world to me, because it turns out we can have connections with objects. And initially, going back to the question, is that my initial thought about the project was to give them a time, like a vigil, like a time for them to spend some time with the objects and think, really reflect themselves on, when did you use this item? Like, how did you use it? Like, did you think that deeply when you used this item, this takeout food container? Like, what have you done to the earth? Where is this going after? Are you putting them in the bin? Are they going to end up in the ocean? Do you know? Like, I wanted them to really think about these things, but turns out they did. They did tell me that we built a connection through the ritual. But what's more important to me is that I felt like they have been through something with the objects throughout the hike. And it's something that they will remember. And so as the observers, like us, watching the videos, reading the logs, I felt like I was there with them.
Yeah, because these issues of, I mean, in a place like Hong Kong, it is a throwaway culture in a way, and actually what we find, well, as in a lot of places, that it's actually harder to be to recycle properly than or to, it's actually harder to be eco-conscious here than in, some other places in the world where,
Exactly.
you can, which is, perhaps, it's just easier. I guess my thought there is with the performers, did they have any revelations in relation to this? Or I'm sure they're very, environmentally conscious, but performers to start with, to agree to do this kind of project. But say, for instance, if this were to be, launched again as say an online performance for other contributors, or other performers to contribute to an online project, for example, what would you expect from them?
I think ultimately I want this to be very personal for them. I don't want this to be a show. I don't want this to be for observers, for audience. I want this to be personal for the person who has collected trash for a week or even longer, because this is something that should be intimate, should influence us in a way. And it has to be, because we are so we're numb. We don't know where the trash, we don't know where the bottles are going to. We think we know where they're going to, but we're not. We don't know how much garbage are in the landfill right now. These are the things that we think we know. We hear from the news, but it's not something we're conscious about. So I really do want this to be very personal for the players. So I think online would work very well because it's something for the players themselves. It's not something for the audience, I think. Yeah, I think this goes to this very interesting question from Zhang Yi, is that maybe extension into education? I think it will be very great for kids. This is a great idea too. I haven't considered any future projects, but I will think about it deeply where this project is going to go.
Yeah. The one thing I find very interesting after listening to the whole presentation is that I find that musicians, in terms of our history, is by nature recyclers of materials. And I think if you look at, since you're a percussionist, you know, I mean, the origin of the timpani has to do with kettles, and you're stretching the skin of the kettle over a drum, and then you have an instrument. And then for myself as a flautist, you know, we hollow out bones, and then you drill a few holes, and then there we are, you know, we have a nice instrument to play on. You know, so I mean, for us as musicians to reflect on the issue of ecology, I think it's very apt for us to be doing so.
I think that also has to do the found object culture that had really that's initiated by John Cage, I guess. But then it slowly got to a point where I think we should wake up. We can't just be buying tomato cans because we need the cans for third construction. That does not make any sense to me, because people are doing that, and I don't think that was the point of found objects. That the point of found objects was find something that was used and being turned into an instrument that we could use. And I'd like percussionists to really think about that too.
I think coming from you, that's a very powerful message, because having worked with you personally, I know that you are very comfortable with playing with found objects as well as well-established instruments. But I mean, the process of discovering how a foreign object that you are not familiar with and you've just found somewhere, and then discovering that there is actually potential in that instrument in producing sound or not producing sound, or producing not the kind of sound that you want, but then, you know, turns out to be something useful. I think that's also a very revealing process for creative musicians, either for musicians or as performers or as composers.
Yeah, I mean, you could turn into something from your home and put in your flute, and you can still play it. Just found object and flute.
There we go.
Yeah. So just to tie things together, I'm just wondering if anyone on Zoom would like to either text in the text box or